All right, I have 6 o'clock. Are you ready to start?
Let's do it.
All right, let's call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We'll begin with the invocation and the pledge. Mighty God, as we gather to plan our city budget, we humbly seek your divine presence. Grant us the wisdom and discernment to make sound financial decisions that will promote the growth and prosperity of Simonton. Guide us in setting realistic goals and targets, ensuring our budget reflects our vision and mission. Help us allocate resources wisely. We place our trust in your divine providence and guidance. Bless our budget planning efforts so that they may lead to financial success, sustainability, and the ability to make a positive impact in the life of our stakeholders. We ask your blessing on all first responders and those who keep us safe at home by serving in our military branches. In your name, I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item 3 on our agenda is public comments. Ms. Nancy, do we have anybody?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Checking with everyone. So budget workshop. The packet that you have in front of you tonight builds on what we did last week. You will find the working budget with updates made during the week this week. That's your very first document after the agenda. I brought you a summary of accounts at New First National Bank. This is the Cedars accounts. And then, I put it out of order, my apologies, but then you'll see a statement, a letter dated today, August 13th, from Deanne Oriana, giving the balances. So the reason there are two is that the items that are in the Cedar account, which is the high interest bearing, are not, for whatever reason, they don't show on the same report from New First as the ICS and the operating money. So these two things go together, the summary of accounts, New First National Bank that we've typed for you, and the letter that comes from New First. So, for example, Burns, the one you have in your hand, those are the Cedars accounts, and it paper clipped the copies of the statements so you can see where the dollars came from. Right. And then skip over that ad valorem tax for roads document. I put it out of order. And when you get to the New First letters, I gave you the one from April and the one from today, just for reference, because you can see if you only look at today like I did, you would say, I feel like there's about $1.5 million missing. Yeah, it's because those funds were put into Cedars accounts to be high interest bearing while they're not being used. So those two things go together. Then you'll find the ad valorem tax for roads by fiscal month. It's just so that you have a tally, since ad valorem tax provides funds for EDCA, EDCB, and for roads. There's a quarter of a, I want to say it correctly, I always want to say it's a quarter of a cent, or a quarter of a percent. That's right. Anyway, so far, year to date, it's $46,651. You'll see that on the budget page. This is just strictly there for reference material. Then after New First, I gave you our remaining liabilities. This is money that is not likely to be spent during this fiscal year, but it will be encumbered. So you'll see that on our audit worksheets, on our budget worksheets. I gave you the priorities that each of you turned in, and then some of the discussion we had last week. Zoning, up to $200,000 potential cost. Road repair, the estimates per mile at $125,000 for overlay and $275,000 for complete rebuild are in partnership with Fort Bend County, where we would buy materials and they provide labor. And those prices are from 2022 and they've been valid through 2024. We don't have a new price, but we have been advised by Fort Wayne County Road and Bridge that they are expecting a cost increase. So nothing we can do about that since we don't know the numbers, but letting you know that there's an expected increase coming in the cost of materials. They'll let us know when they know something about that. And then code enforcement, you'll find, is also included in the workshop pages. This was just developed before those pages were updated. I gave you the list of those road prices that we've been using for reference the last couple of years. There's every road that needs major repair. I'm sorry, I should say, these are the roads that have been identified as needing repair. Some of them need total rebuild and some need overlay, but this will give you the idea that we're looking at support on our need for a road project long-term plan for repair, because it could be, $6 to $12 million depending on which road needs which kind of work. And when our ad valorem money that's coming in, that's dedicated to that, is $46,000 a year, you don't fund much road work, if any, unless you skip some years and you save up, and it takes you 4 years to accumulate $100,000 unless you find other ways to fund it. So the information there is to support the discussion around roads. And then you'll find, I think the last document is budget versus actual. And the first page is the revenue expense summary and expense summary. This is the city financial statement. I'm calling it budget versus actual just for our purposes today. And you'll see that the remaining budget is $530,000 on an annual budget of $887. It was actually over $1 million since we had an expenditure from reserves that council voted on last year for roads. To Courtney's point, she pointed that out a couple of meetings ago, that fund view at this printing doesn't have that transfer in it. You will see it in your version, how it's accounted for. But that's sort of irrelevant to this particular page. There's $530,000 of unspent funds, which we'll talk more about in a couple of minutes when we look at the $340,000-ish, $341,500 of encumbered funds that are dedicated to projects. If that makes sense. So I know that was a lot, but I wanted to know what documents are here in line so that we can go back then to the second document right behind the agenda and go through what we've got there that's different than last week.
Can I stop you for a second? I don't believe these copies are accurate. Number one,
What kind of copies?
on the summary of accounts that you ran through just a second ago, I don't have a listing for any Cedars accounts. The numbers on this page don't match the numbers on this page. And then this one is from April, and this one is from August, and there's
That's right.
1.1 million missing. I don't have the Cedars information.
That's what I just said, is the money that was there was invested in Cedars.
So we just don't have a listing for that.
That listing right there with the paperclip on it that you said doesn't match.
Yeah, I don't have
Actually
that.
does. That's the one I'm talking about.
No, I'm saying I don't have the Cedars information. I have several that list the $16,000 balance. I have the first one that lists the 1.109 or 1 million. Then this one says 8,000. This one says 246. This one says 154. This one says 24. None of those numbers are on here.
Those are, it's the statement, you'll have to take the clip off. It's page 1 and 2, like the first one is 3 pages long. So it's a breakdown.
So the total is on the last page of each one of those statements. So we've given you a total page just as a summary.
First 3 pages go to this one.
That's so that
And then
1
they don't-
million one is 3
add up.
pages long. That's all.
And I think what she was asking is, do we have one that has Cedars?
everything on this page is a Cedars account.
Everything on which page?
That front page,
The one in
Okay.
the top one that you have right.
Everything in which account? I'm sorry?
Everything on this page is a Cedars. There are 6 different accounts, all in Cedars investments.
So this whole thing is a Cedars. Where's the operating?
So
Because that
City of
says
Simonton operating is the top one, for example, for $1 million, 9,142. That's our operating money that's been taken from the regular City of Simonton operating that you see on your new first. Okay.
Okay,
So there's, under advice of our banker, there's not much, we're not earning the money that we should on our, I'm gonna say $1 million. We didn't move $1 million all at once, but I did move $800,000 that was not gonna be spent immediately into a high interest bearing. So that's why it went right into the City of Simonton operating account. So it's gone from an ICS or a money market into a Cedars, just because the vehicle of Cedars earns more money.
okay, so
So while
this is a list of our complete accounts, and this most recent letter from New First is a
That is
list of our
correct.
current accounts.
Mhm.
So what
So you have
happened,
15
you're saying
bank
that you
accounts.
decided to move the difference between the 401 and the 1.6 to a different account, correct?
Generally, yes. It's not down to the penny, but yes.
Okay. 'Cause
So I
they
want
just
you to
don't
be able
match,
to
that's all
see.
I'm asking.
I'm sorry?
They just don't, the numbers don't match at all. I was just, and I don't have that listing where it shows the Cedars account, other than like
The bank
this page.
statements are where that came from. So
Yeah,
unfortunately, the bank did not prepare us a list of the Cedars like they did prepare a list of the ICS and money market accounts. So we did the next best thing and just printed the statements and gave you a summary.
okay. Do we have an idea of why that money was moved? Or did we we just moved it because it wasn't in use and we weren't gonna use it because that was budgeted to be used, correct?
Some is budgeted and some is reserves. So, for example, the Simonton EDCs, let's say. You can see we have Cedars for each one. One has 252,000, one has 100. When you go over to your ICS and money markets, you got another, and I apologize, I did not get my glasses out of my car, but in A, we've got 169,000, and in B, we got 200,000. So let's take B for example. You got 209,000 there, and you got 252,000 in a Cedars. So you got $450,000 in round numbers. Instead of us leaving all $450,000 just in our money market, we knew we could earn a higher rate in Cedars, and we don't have an expenditure because the boards have just been reseeded, and they don't have projects on the table for that 400,000. So do half of it, and you put it in a Cedars so that it can be earning top dollar.
I guess that's the confusion. This shows, as
If I
of
didn't got-
April, we had in our ICS 1.6, and then in August, as of today, we're down to 400,
That's right.
but then you're saying it was moved.
Either swept, or I shouldn't say swept, it's not the same type of account, but moved from money market or ICS to Cedars. So the reason that I gave you April and August from New First is so that it would make sense, because I looked at it and first thing I thought was, where's my other $1.5 million? I know we should have it. Oh yeah, it's in Cedars. So if we had received this from the bank earlier than today, we would have been able to give you a summary all in one piece of paper. But I didn't want to mess with the letter that's official that came from the bank, because I know that you had some concerns before that you couldn't see all the balances in an official capacity. So you got statements to back up the one that we summarized for you, and you've got the official letter from the bank for the other.
But this official, that's what I'm getting at. The official letter from the bank doesn't match unless these are just completely separate and these are
They are
just the
completely
numbers.
separate. Yes, ma'am, they are completely separate.
Some of the numbers match and some don't. That's,
They are
They all
going to-
match.
no,
I
they
mean,
don't.
If
There's
you
a
sit
hundred and,
down and opened every single one of those statements, you can make everything match. I didn't
This-
really mean for you to have to go to accounting right now to.
no, I'm not, I mean, it's not, it's just a, like this one says 154, that one says 154, this one goes with that, this one goes with that. I've got like 3 pages here, I think that was what I was getting at. I've got this set, these 2 sets, this 2 sets, and then another 2 sets that are all at 1610, so I just, there may have been an additional copy there. Just trying to understand the balances. So we know what we're operating with. Our budget last year was that $1,033,000, and then this budget continues to say $887,000. That's what you said was going to be adjusted tonight, or we were going to see the proper one?
Yes, so the budget that's posted online, the adopted budget, is correct. It's the
$33,000, yeah.
$1,038, or, yes. The fund view, the transfer of the $146,000 for roads, or the posting, if you will, the accounting posting of it, wasn't ever done. The money was left, absolutely hasn't been touched, but until you asked about it, we didn't realize that that wasn't posted in there. And we haven't
Okay.
needed to spend it, so it just didn't come up. So that's why fund view doesn't match, and just, we don't want to just go in and correct it. We want to make sure we do that the proper accounting way with Natalie's guidance. So I know that causes an added bit of confusion about that. But so you can rely on the adopted budget is the correct adopted budget. Fund view just needs a correction to show that 146,000, which I'm going to show you in a second on the encumbered money, a second on the proposed budget.
Okay, got it. Do we have an idea or a general standing point that we could, like starting point, I should say, not standing, but starting point of, based on these reports, obviously they look different, and I'm sure you're going to explain that, but they look different in the fact that this was done in one format, and then this one was done in that format, but the ones that you gave at the last meeting, and forgive me, maybe it was just my ignorance from not being here, but the ones that you gave in the last meeting are itemized by number. It's not in the same format.
Fund view has changed something in their software this year that when you're in budget, it doesn't let you print out in that full-blown format like you do when you're doing your everyday operating until you adopt the budget.
Okay.
So you can still get that level of detail out, it just looks different.
Okay. Got it.
And then once we go to adopt it, it'll just continue to be exactly the same that we've been using on here. So in short, if you tally that new first page, it's about, round numbers again, that's about $1 million. And summary of the Cedars is about $1.5 million. So I know that you all have asked for information like that, just sharing what our position is right now. Now, just as a reminder, EDC money is EDC money. Unless EDCs make a plan for an expenditure, that just is, we're not changing anything with that. Meaning, we couldn't decide as a council that we'd like to use $200,000 to build roads, because that's dedicated for a different purpose. Same thing with the grant money. I know that y'all know all this already, but just restate before we dig in. Keep Simonton Beautiful money. They're all dedicated to specific purposes. Y'all ready to take a look at the working draft? All right, so I've gone through this week and we've made sure that we have everything that we have notes about or that council has worked on this year that should be encumbered meaning you've already voted on the expenditure. The expenditure is still going to happen, but it's not going to happen in this budget year before September 30th. So on page 1, for the income items, you'll see the ad valorem estimates, CAD, mixed beverage, those are all based on the forecast it comes from the county. The estimated collection for EDC 4A, 4B, and the 0.25% for roads. We've decreased building permits and looking for places to make some cuts, and I probably said that last week, so forgive me if I'm repeating. I might be wrong about that. We've got another request for a plat today. We've got another new housing start at the end of last week. But the housing slowdown reporting that's been going on is why we went ahead and made that selection. You can change it if you want, but that's why you see a decrease of $4,000 in building permit fees. I just made a note that the annual disbursement from Fort Bend County on the child safety fee, meaning you'll see later a budget line item for that. That's something that has to be used for the child safety program, and you can't break that $1,000 and put it somewhere else. Just has some requirements on it. The EDC Technology Fund, insurance fees, administrative fees, and audit fees, when you see in, that's money that will come from the EDCs to the city budget for things like we do a policy that covers all types of insurance, not a separate policy, so the city pays for that, so they fund it out of theirs. The cost of EDC audits would come from their department. Administrative fees, we talked about that. I don't know if we talked about that with Counselor with the new boards, but the boards compensate the city for minutes, postings, agenda development, the kinds of things that the board members are not doing, but need official posting and all those sorts of things. The rest of those items there in interest are probably self-explanatory. And then, so in other revenue general fund, where you see those 6 items that are listed out as encumbered, try to list out best I can what they're for to help us all remember now and in the future. So you'll see that we put the money in the budget in the income section, and then when we get down in a few minutes, you'll see it come back out in each budget item, so it will balance. So we got technology. That'll be for the chambers to put new equipment in here after the expansion is finished. The bathroom repair for the current fire bay. The $76,000 from the ARPA project. Probably should call that project instead of the word grant, because that is the EDC project that Board A is funding. Audit is expense for the audits for 22 and 23. Since those haven't been presented and they haven't billed us obviously for that. The encumbered amount from reserves at $146,000, that is the roads. I'll add the word roads, I missed it. And then the budget, the last line item is the $54,000 that was in this year's budget for roads. So the $146,000 and the $54,000 were combined to make $200,000, which was our request for road work this year from Fort Bend County Road and Bridge. So we're still on their job list for that. We don't want to let that go because hopefully we'll be in under the previous costs, but that's not expected to get completed until spring. So we're going to make sure that money continues to be set aside for that.
That would not be a requirement in this year's budget if it's already accounted for, correct? We wouldn't need to, it's an encumbered amount, we've already got that money, we're holding on to
It is, but just for accounting purposes and audit purposes, we have to show it in our budget. So we're gonna show it as going in, and going out. You'll see in a couple of minutes. So it cancel each other out, but it's the proper way to show it in fund accounting.
You said that they're estimated to be done in spring? For these-
What he said to me was
Roughly.
after winter, so I'm calling that spring.
Okay.
I'm not real sure, does that mean February or April? I don't know. But since they didn't get to us and they're overbooked, they're not expecting to get to us. Now, if something changes, they could just show up, since we've already got our request filed with Fort Bend County. But that would be wonderful. I can't imagine that we would get billed in this fiscal year though, so we're gonna go on the assumption that we would pay that in the next fiscal. All right, the next page, 2, 5, sorry. I made correction in health insurance, I mentioned that last week when I know we were talking, it was incorrect. The technology, next line down. Thank you very much. You're stumbling and asking me, thank you, Brett. Oh, much better. The third line, which belongs with 100-10-5030, that's technology. That's a formatting error to make it easier to read, but the encumbered amount for technology of $20,000 for the council chamber. We just talked about it on the income line, but so here it is on the expense line. We have budgeted another $20,000 for this year for technology needs that the city might have. That would be where we were talking about, we got laptops or whatever type of computer we end up needing to replace or other equipment. So that's what technology. I added notes in just to help everybody remember what some of the things are, like copier lease, etc.
I was wondering why right now technology is being put here in this bucket. Like AT&T and internet, those different things, why they're not being put over into facilities. It's like
They actually are,
there's-
this is summary. This whole thing that we're looking at is the summary page and not the down and down and down detail page.
No,
So
but
when-
if you look at that budget versus actual, you'll see that they're all under 10, 50, 30. They're not under the facility. There's some things being put under facility, like city hall electricity, streetlights, but janitorial services, pest control and stuff.
Right.
But the internet and AT&T phones, T-Mobile, everything is being put under the 10, 50, 30. It seems like it should be under, they should all be under that
Let's look at the chart.
facilities.
It's in the back of the binder from last week. Hold on one second.
The facilities is the 30, let's see, 40s.
Okay, I'm sorry, say it again. 10, 50, 30 technology?
Yes.
So 10, 50, 30
Yeah.
is under public works.
Okay. And
And
that's
this-
right now where they're being categorized. That's where they're being put in that bucket. The internet, AT&T,
Oh, yeah.
all that instead of under facilities. So it's just.
Yes. So facilities, what we'd like is facilities to be public works, more maintenance and ongoing, like paying the light bill, those sorts of things, AT&T subscriptions, those sorts of deals.
But it wouldn't be,
Where
the technology wouldn't be under facilities,
it could be called that, because there's a category for technology under
right?
public works. It's just a matter of trying to put it as close to the place where it belongs, and say belongs, or it's easy to define, because we're trying to add as much detail as possible so it's easy to understand where every single penny is coming from and where it's going and why. If that makes sense. And it could be technology for facility, could be, I mean, this would probably be emergency operations, but let's say it's not. Let's say we decide with our new system we put in here for video for meetings, that we have, tie this in somehow, or get new screens, or we need, I don't know, I'm not the technology whiz for that, so I'm sort of. Or we're gonna finally tie that TV or something like it that's in the lobby so that during an emergency situation, people could see whatever information we're broadcasting here in the lobby. Or the security system, like, honestly, there's not one today that's very, it's not a cohesive. We have some that could really use an upgrade, especially once we spend the money to have the building enlarged. So those sorts of things would go more in technology facilities as opposed to public works. Administration would be more computers or things that are used by administration. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Does it answer what you're asking about, Faith?
Yeah, I just
Sort of.
wondered what the difference was between the 10 categories to the 40 categories. The 10, she said, is the.
10 is more administration,
Administration.
or in the summary and this kind of thing when it rolls
Okay.
out.
And facilities.
I am super glad you used that as an example. I have a random question. I'm going back through our, what was this? Meeting from July 2nd. There was January, February, March, and then the better part of April that was kind of given in a different format at that point. And I'm just looking at January, the overall expense summary lists a category of administration. It says that our current year budget, is $659,933. So that's a lot of money on administration. When we go to this, it does not list it as administration, and I could be assuming here, which I don't want to do, but there is no category on our budget that lists it as administration. So how do we come up with a budget that looks like this, but doesn't have that category in this? Does that make sense?
It does. Because what you're looking at here in our draft is the rolled up totals that come from the giant deck that you have there. So when council decides, yep, and so to develop these numbers, all of that sort of work is done and entered, and we think it's gonna cost $84 for this and $650 to repair the front door, and all of that work goes in to produce this. And then once you say, yes, this is what we wanna do, here's the rate we wanna do, and here's the budget we wanna have, then we'll be sure and go back and make sure that everything that's a supporting category that rolls up to this is absolutely correct. Whether that's, like last year, we took money out of miscellaneous in number of categories. So we made our total equal what we wanted. We went back and made sure that every subcategory was correct. So it's just a matter, Courtney, of going back and then making sure that the subcategories match the total. It's electronic, so it's not that manual. If we plug it in and say it needs to equal 210,000, then we can real easily see that there's a $200 something that needs to be fixed.
I guess that's what I'm asking. So this budget says, again,
I don't know, I don't have what you're looking at since you are looking, is that a monthly
it's the
financial
January budget versus actual that you guys provided on the 2nd, and then all the way up to March. And if you go even into April, those were the same.
Right.
And it lists a category of administration, which is a 150-10, So if I go through these accounts, I don't find one that says administration. I find several that say 5210, but they don't add up to $660,000.
One hundred dash, everything, 100-10.
It's 50, yeah, it's got
Yes,
a 50 or
10,
52. I'm just thinking that that was a rolled up number of several categories.
It is.
Yes, everything that has
I mean,
100-10.
Without
And
looking
that's-
at it, the answer is yes. It's
Yeah.
a rolled up total. So
Right, but
giving
our
you-
administration fees being 2/3 or close to 2/3 of our entire taxing, is that what it costs to run the city?
So I would say, this is a blanket statement, which,
Okay,
just take it for what it is, because we're trying to talk about the way it works, not every line item. Is 100 generally is called administration, and that's the summary. So page 1 here, the income, this is a 100, every single one of those lines says 100 by it,
Mhm.
but it encompasses every source of income that we're going to receive. So this would be considered administration, even though it comes from a whole lot of different sources. So then as you go through the other 5 pages or 4 pages, however many, every one of these is numbered a leading number 100, and then the second 2 digits tells you what department it comes from, and the third set of 4 numbers tells you what ledger or category it is. So for it to say $600,000, probably right, because if you get down to the total here, this is $800,000 of income that we're calling at the very highest level of the deck administration. But then the more you go into it, the more detail you see.
do we have a list, this is gonna sound very elementary, but bear with me. Do we have a list somewhere of what we currently pay for on a monthly basis and what it costs us? As far as what our employment costs are, what our AT&T costs are, what our revolving, normal, monthly costs look like.
That is, it's not pulled out by vendor, although we can do that.
I don't need it by
It's-
vendor, I'm just saying
That's
like,
what the monthly report that we started in January, the financial statement, that's what that is. So you can go through and see what we're paying every single month.
yeah, but that's not, it
So if
doesn't
you'd like to see it by a
depict
vendor
that.
list, I mean, that's.
I
something
don't need it by a
else to
vendor
work on.
list. I was just trying to kind of put it in the simple terms of what our monthly costs are to operate the city. Obviously things happen and I get that. But so that we have a starting point of where we need, what we absolutely have to budget for, and then working from that into our projects. And that way, we don't miss a category, we don't have to go back and amend the budget later or halfway or not at all, and just to make those changes, to make sure that those categories, right off the bat, I mean, that's kind of an easy, all right, we need X amount of dollars here, then it allows us a starting point, if you will. I didn't know if we had that available. I don't need it by vendor, just, are we paying for 3 phones? Are we paying for 4 phones? Are we paying for 2 employees? Because I'm assuming that Janie will be departing, unfortunately, in September, but that won't be going forward into that budget. So I was just figuring if we had a starting point, then it would make, because this is in one format, this one's in one format, this one's in a different format, and then the one we got last week, or that everybody got last week, was in a different format. So I was just asking if we have an idea of if it's like 20 grand a month, or if it's 30 grand a month, or whatnot, that we need to just make sure we account for, so that we can go forward and account for emergency situations or anything like that appropriately, or projects.
So we could probably take that council book you have there and look at January through May and say, okay, we spent something, I don't mean to do it right this second.
No, I
but
know.
mean, the average was $35,000, I'm just making up a number.
And
I'm not
technically,
willing to just throw it out there, I don't know that.
we would have been able to
average,
do
but-
that, but they run so far behind, because I looked through it and I was thinking, okay, let's just come up with an average number. But obviously your revenue's different too.
That's
So you're
right.
at different months, you're gonna get more money versus other months, right? When their
That's
ad
right.
valorem and things like that come in. However, a starting point would be nice, because this, I
if
mean, we
you-
can look at it and throw a needle at the wall and hope we hit a $2,000, fee or whatnot, but it makes it very difficult, to her point, to say, okay, well, on technology, over here it's in technology, but over here it's in miscellaneous. And there are several different charges in those miscellaneous categories that don't reoccur every month. So that's kind of why I was asking. I was like, there's one $1,300 charge that just, it says it's a monthly fee. It doesn't say what it's a monthly fee for, and it just was there the 1 month. So I was like, okay, maybe if we have just a starting point to have an idea of, like what our payroll looks like and what our taxes look like and all that good stuff.
So, to keep council from having to be the administration, that's why the annual numbers are the way we're starting or we're looking at budget. If there's any category we want to go deeper, we can absolutely do that. But, so if we were to take payroll budget, for example, we haven't changed the payroll budget because we haven't made any decisions to hire in a different way. I think it's on page,
It's on page 2.
so I got my pages out of order already.
I tried to do that.
All right, and the notes, and so I've been trying to add notes because it helps everybody understand where it comes from and why. So health insurance, $1,200 a month per employee times 2 employees. Okay, I know you just said you saw it on page 2. Here, it's
Yeah,
payroll
payroll
of
and payroll
$210,000. So we have previously agreed that our second position, our city administrator position, and we have advertised, still have an advertisement out there that our max salary is $109,000. So we've taken salary we're already paying, the part-time we pay Julie, and the potential for a new employee to be at the top of that salary range, and that's where those numbers come from. So I'm not saying trust the math. What I am saying is there's a lot of work to make sure that we know what the needs are, where that money is being spent, or where it's being proposed to come back with these numbers. So if there's a specific one, it's probably easier for us to get to the 2024-25 budget by talking about, let's look at the total. Council has asked for roads, zoning, and, oh my goodness, code enforcement as priorities to consider.
I guess that's kind of what I'm
So-
getting at. If we had a way to know, so we had a budget of $1,033,000 and some change last year. According to this and the notes, we did not spend $1,033,000 and some change last year. So that money has been put over here, but we're asking at this proposal, we're asking to increase the rate to 31 cents when we didn't spend it at 30 cents.
Well, let me point something out. I'm glad you brought that up. Number one, I know that this says that this is a working budget at 31, the .309753, but this budget is not balanced, as you can see on the last page. It's close, but I made some changes based on the conversation we had last week. So I put money in zoning, but there is no money in roads other than what was expected to be earned this year with the ad valorem tax 0.25%. Council might decide, yeah, we don't want to do it that way. We want to go ahead and put something on roads and whatever you all decide project-wise. So this budget, the way it's written right now, there is only a there's a $10,000 variance that has to be resolved because we must have a balanced budget. But if you get everything else that you want in this budget, and I need to go find $10,000, then I will find a way to cut $10,000 and bring it back to you. If that means it comes out of whatever, technology for emergency operations takes $500 in this category, this category, this category. So what we really need is for you all to decide, and you might want for reference, you might want to take under budget files, that second document where I gave you last week, has the colors and shows at each tax rate how much money would be earned. Or maybe not, it might just be more confusing. But this is based on the .309. Because we want to make sure we corral ourselves enough money to work on zoning or roads or whatever you decide. Basically, it's about $150,000 in the budget now. We talked about that that's probably a $200,000 project, so we need to have a plan when we come out of this if you decide zoning is the way to go.
So what happens if you remove the encumbered amounts? Because we've already got that money.
So you remove the encumbered amounts on the income, and then you go to each budget page where I've noted the encumbered amounts, and you take those out as well. And so you have a zero sum.
That's a chunk of change.
$341,500.
That's,
I mean, council's already decided to do those projects. That's fantastic. It's great. But this is just to make sure that money that is dedicated by council for a purpose remains documented that it's for a purpose and doesn't vanish out of the checking account, for lack of a better.
well, it's not, I mean,
Description.
it's already
It's not gonna
accounted
vanish,
for. It's already accounted
It
for,
is.
correct?
It is.
It's already been voted on, to your point. So, I mean, that money has been set aside for it. I don't think that kind of charging for it again in this budget, I mean, I know why you have to put it there. I get why you have to put it there because you would have to transfer it back and all that good stuff out of Cedars and all that. However, this working amount at this 433,000 on the 31 cents, I mean, that's almost, it's about $100,000 shy of what we would just be replenishing the money again, right? If we go with this 31 cents, we would just be replenishing those dollar amounts again. We've been saying for 2 years now, 3 years now, that we would spend that money on roads, so we're gonna take it back out again, out of reserves, and then put it back in this budget again, which means we would
So,
balance it by getting that money again.
well, this is not proposing spending money, right now, the way this is written, is not proposing spending money out of reserves. Because that is not good practice, so I'm not recommending that. If council decides to do it, then you do, but I'm not recommending that.
No, that's
So
not
what
right.
I'm saying is, the council needs to decide on a tax rate that will either give us the exact same amount of money we had last year, more or less. And what your priority is for how that money gets spent. Are we gonna do any zoning at all? Are we gonna defer that until some later time? Unfortunately, this is what happens when, as a result of market compression, which is what, we were talking about a couple of years ago, and our lower tax rate is great for our individual bill, not complaining about that, but now we need the money to move zoning forward, and we've got to figure out how you want to do that. And are we going to save our road money, our 46,000-ish that we're going to earn this year? And zoning should be complete next year. We'll just pay for zoning this year, and you can do road the following year. Are you going to consider raising the tax rate so that you could do zoning and accelerate your rate of savings for money to do roads? I mean, there are lots of options. The healthiest things to do is not to stay below 30 cents where we are counting on $46,000 a year to get us to a road solution.
Even at the 20,
And we're not talking about taking on debt at this point. Of course, council could make that decision in the future, but I don't think anybody has an appetite for that at this point.
even at the 24-cent rate that you put on your taxable value. Wow, sorry, I was bowling up there.
24, 30.
On the 24-cent rate, it's 100 and some change difference. If we utilize the money that we've already taxed people for 2 years, it reduces this by $300,000, and that is still at 24 cents, less than $100,000 difference. We've already got
I
that.
guess I'm not following you. So if you did a 24-cent tax rate, you would reduce the income on ad valorem, just ad valorem, by $80,086.21.
From 34 cents.
From 433 cents, $433 at the, I'm going to call it 30.9.
So at the
Sorry,
30.9,
from the,
yeah.
from the no new revenue of 30 cents, where we are now.
right, so that would reduce it from 433 to 335, which is not quite.
No,
460.
416 to 335.
But you're proposing 433.
I would be proposing something different than any of that, but I'm giving you, the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate come from the county, so those are the ones highlighted here.
Correct. What we're looking at here, though, is the 30.9, which is $433,000 worth of income. What we are looking at here, if we went all the way down to 24, is 335, which is right at $100,000, actually less, $98,000 worth of a difference. And we
Less money
can
for us.
remove, less money, correct,
Do you
less
want to
taxes.
do roads or anything?
I do, but we've already accomplished that, and we've
No,
already
we
got,
haven't.
we haven't accomplished the gig, no, we have not. However, we've got the money. We've been
No, we
taking that,
don't.
yes, we do.
It's between $6 and $12 million to do our roads.
Okay, well, that I have not seen on any type of piece of
If you
paperwork.
were listening,
So
at the
that,
beginning of this meeting, that was stated.
I'll,
And if you look at the form, which was given to us, you will see that.
nope, those are dated. She even said those are dated prices. That's not my point. My point is this.
okay, but
we've-
if we could slow down for just a second. The roads are listed, and it gives the length and feet of every single road.
Mhm.
So it's not just arbitrary cost to do it.
Understood.
So Kelly's not wrong by saying it's millions of dollars to do the roads. We have, you budgeted last year and requested $200,000 worth. It's gonna be less than a mile for 3 segments of road that are really terrible. It's great. Sorry, I thought that was the rain or something. So, I mean, that's great work, but you still have several $1 million worth of road work to do. And it's gonna take time to accumulate that, or you're gonna have to budget for it, you're gonna have to
Understood.
figure out, and taking, let's say that we have, I'm not saying we should do that. It's $1 million a year in round numbers, operating the city and doing some projects at this point. Because we have $150,000 scheduled into that. So if we operated $1 million, and we have
You could
roughly
do-
$1 million that is dedicated to other items, like grant money and EDC money and things like that, that can't just be used for roads. Let's say we have $1 million in round numbers of reserve. Reserve is there for an emergency. If you don't have a plan, if you spend your reserves and you don't have a plan of how you're gonna replace those reserves, then when it breaks loose, you don't have the money. Let's say the floodgates fail and we need to spend $750,000 in equipment. I'm making up numbers, I'm not trying to be inflammatory, but I think where you're going is, we have reserve money, we should spend it.
No, I'm
Because
not
people
saying
have
that,
already
that you
been
can remove the
taxed on
word
it?
reserved. I'm saying
Okay.
we have already calculated this and been taxed on it for the past God knows how many years, and none of that work has been done. So if we've received the money and we have not done the work. Therefore, I'm all about the zoning. I think that all these projects need to happen and everything else. But instead of inflating that number and saying, well, we'll get to it when we get to it, or there's a grant
but-
possibly coming, or whatever, I'm saying we go with a lower tax rate. Give these people a break, including myself. At a 24 cent, you've got less than $100,000 difference in your taxable amount in value in incoming. And we've already got the 146, as a matter of fact, we've gotten it for at least 2 years. Because
146.
the encumbered amount that
Okay,
was
so
put into
you all-
reserves.
You all took that from reserves last year.
Right,
Spent that from reserves.
but if you look at your notes on this little booklet, it even says this will not be part of 2024, 2025. So we were planning that to be, that money is being held on to for
Right.
roads.
But so that
so-
$200,000 is dedicated.
Correct.
I'm not understanding what money you're saying we've been taxing on for years. and we haven't
Exactly.
It's the same thing. We've been paying, last year it was gonna cost us, I think, $6.9 million for an intersection or something like that, that was an inflated number to begin with as well. I'm saying even at
That is absolutely not true, so let's not go there.
even at a
because it's not relevant now
6 cent
either.
rate, even at a 6 cent difference, at 24 cents, you're looking at $98,000. Can we not cut $98,000 from our budget
Sure.
and actually accomplish a job that we set out to do, or a priority that we set out to do?
No. I mean, almost, no. I would say, I told you last week, I'm sorry you weren't here, I don't mean to be saying that, but we went through and cut about 50,000 out, adding up everything that we could find a place, like permits and various expenses. And if you want to continue to have a function here where we're managing and preparing for growth, the answer is no. We are already not moving at the pace that we used to, and we're not moving at a pace that's keeping up with the development coming our way. We don't have the staff for that.
I mean, the inclusion
If you
of one
take-
more staff member is already in this budget.
It's not. It's actually the budget that we've had for 5 years with 2 full-time and 1 part-time employee. We didn't spend all of that money this year when we were short-staffed, but we can't continue to run long-term without the staff.
I'm just saying, we've got to have some sort of an idea of what the starting point is, because,
Okay, well, the starting point is here, and I don't understand.
no, I mean, this
I mean,
is
I
a
need you to just,
proposed.
I guess, be specific about which item you'd like to work on.
I just
and
want to know
maybe
what it costs
some-
to run the city as a starting point.
It's-
What does it cost on a monthly basis? It's got to be somewhat normalized. I know what my monthly expenses are, and I realize that the government is a little bit different, but on
Okay.
these reports, they run differently. So it's very difficult for us to just say, well, we might need this here, we might need that there, in order to ensure that we tax it properly and put the right amount of money in those categories.
Okay.
And make sure that it's spent and not just put into a different account,
That's right.
so that it builds that, because that's, call me crazy, but that's kind of robbing from Peter to pay no one, and no one's seeing the benefit of that other than the city, but just holding on to a large reserve. And
Okay.
I don't think that's fair.
All right.
That's just me.
So, rest of council, sorry, I haven't called on everybody. Need to hear your thoughts on what projects are we focusing on?
I'll tell you some of mine. And I'm kind of going along with what she's saying, but in a little different way. Since I've been on council, there hadn't been any road repair that I know about. I don't know when it was done last, when there was actual road repair done. I don't know the answer to that. But it hadn't been since I've been on council.
That's correct.
The year before I got on council, we had a 45-cent tax, so we accumulated some money from the people that live here. No road repair that I know about.
So, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
For that $200,000 that was collected the
Yeah.
year that we had the 44-cent tax rate?
Yes, ma'am.
That was for the comprehensive plan, and that money was spent on a comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So it was special purpose for that.
Okay. It's kind of like, I don't know how, I mean, this is just kind of a picture I get.
Yeah.
I don't claim to have any super knowledge about it. And y'all can argue with me all you want, I don't care. We got however many millions we have in the bank here. We are going to continue to collect money each year from the various sources of revenue, including property taxes. And sort of what you were saying, we haven't really spent the money on roads. one other point I'd like to make is, from what I'm understanding, even when we want the roads repaired, they can only do, in other words, we have to wait in line. We can only do so much at a time. Therefore, we're only gonna spend, am I right or wrong? Can you
Well,
tell me if I'm,
technically, you are if we continue to partner with Fort Bend County Road and Bridge.
okay?
If we want to hire a contractor directly, we can do that. We just have never chosen to because it is so much more expensive.
Well, heck yeah, I agree with
So,
that. I'm not
We are
arguing
at the
no, I totally,
mercy of the
Yeah, I know
scheduling
we
with the
are.
county.
I'm
So
not.
you're right about that.
I'm not complaining, I'm just pointing it out, that they're only gonna do so much.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we do have road and bridge scheduled to come out and do work, will they only do half a mile, or will they do whatever we've laid out for that particular project? So if we said we want them to do 10 miles and here's the money up front, they will come out here and when they start that project, they will do all 10 miles or whatever.
typically, yes.
Okay.
They will.
Okay, so it's whenever we're next in line, it's whatever we've got the funds for, they will. take.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, to an extent, they also schedule around, we need 3 days worth of work, these people need 10 days, we're gonna fit in the scheduling slot. So it just depends the size of the project.
Okay.
We made a request this year for these 3 roads that it's total of less than a mile, and it's our budget of $200,000. We didn't fit in the slot. We haven't so far. It's not over. The season's not over yet this year. But
That's the
we're at the
point I'm
mercy
trying
of,
to make, I
if
guess.
it's a bigger project, it's easier to get a chunk of time dedicated than when you're a small
Yeah,
project,
yeah.
then they're fitting us in very.
So all the time, at the time we're waiting for them to come, we're accumulating money. And I don't think it's anybody's idea that we're gonna do all those roads at once. So I sort of go along with the need that we don't keep needing to pile up money when we're not using it.
But don't you think it would be nice that, hey, Fort Bend County, we have $1 million allocated to roads. Can you do $1 million worth of work for us?
We put
Versus
1.2 in reserves.
200,000. I'm sorry?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether that impresses them or whether that's gonna make
Oh,
them jump.
I'm not saying the
Or
number
what?
impresses them. It just,
Yeah, we can't get them to do
They'll
this little
get a
bit that
lot
we've
more.
asked. That's where I'm coming from. They didn't bother to do this 200,000 that we asked.
I'm curious as to how much it would cost them just to get their equipment out here to do a half a
I
mile.
don't know
How did Stansberry get done?
the answer to that.
Well,
They
Stansbury
did
is in the county,
Stansbury Road, by the
and
way.
it doesn't go on their rotation. It's not in the city, so we didn't,
It's in the
We
city
didn't-
limits.
no, it's not.
It's part of the ETJ, but it's in the city limits for
It's
sure.
not
It's
in the
not
city.
missing.
You talking about Stansbury?
Stansbury.
No, but they did it.
They
Yeah.
did,
And I
on
watched,
their own
I mean, they had the equipment piled up, you know,
Yeah, they
It's
did
right
it in
over
a couple of
here.
days.
and they did it. I don't know how long it took them. I just noticed,
It wasn't very long,
Yeah.
but
so, I don't know, that's my
I guess
comment.
I keep seeing you making a face. I'm hesitant to say they didn't bother to do it,
Oh, I don't.
because they
I-
do a lot for us. And I mean,
I
if they can
know.
give us any extra time or
Yeah.
attention, they do. They're not holding back because our project is small. Just want to reassure everybody that.
I
It's
agree.
just not been a good fit for how over scheduled we are this year.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about them. I'm just pointing out the fact that
my concern is that we only have $200,000 allocated to roads. So we can see right here, how long is Wagon? I mean,
So
Wagon doesn't need to be
let's look at the
redone.
chart and see how long.
Oh,
excuse me?
1 second.
Wagon is falling off.
Wagon
Yeah,
needs
so
to be
is
cut
all the
down.
rest of the other roads, like.
Wagon
Lakewood
is by far
dirt.
the worst,
So
it needs to
Wagon
be redone.
is,
period.
Yeah,
Wagon is part of the grant that we are holding right now, waiting for them to open urgent need. So hopefully we can get that redone, like completely rebuilt at no direct cost to the taxpayers. So that would be grant money. I don't
So
know
if
when
that's
it's gonna be
grant money, it
awarded, but
doesn't
that's
go in
why
here.
we are still actively
hoping.
pursuing grant money for
Trying.
all of these types of projects.
right, but if that's grant money, it doesn't go in here.
That's correct,
And
and
it
it's not
also
in there
doesn't go
now.
in here. Because then you're double charging them
Right,
again.
you also don't know if you're ever gonna get it, so
Well,
we could
understood.
decide, like, for example, where the culverts go under Wagon from the outfall at 1093 and then they go towards the main
Oh,
outfall.
those look nice.
They're collapsing, they're being held up by 2x4s right now. So we're trying to escalate the project in order to get that moved up to the top of the list. We've said it's urgent need, but they haven't moved yet. If we get to a point that that is no longer safe to drive, we're gonna have to come up with the money to fix at least that part right there and not wait for the grant. So, I mean, Wagon, we can still, it'll be off of what we continue to drive on it, but there are projects like that that are included in the grant that the clock is ticking. We'll see.
We've talked about that grant several times, $1 million to, however much it was. So what's the status of it? I mean, is that a fair question?
Yeah, the requirement from the federal government is that first they have to serve low to moderate income, up to X percentage. We didn't qualify for where the road's located, the income doesn't match. So we went ahead and applied for it, and they have a pool of money, however many millions of dollars, and when they can no longer do projects and fill places that do meet the low to moderate income, then they can open it up for urgent need. So I know that they have started reviewing those actively. They had already reviewed everybody's application, and you're either in or you're out of the process, but they haven't come back and said they've awarded any yet, but I know that they moved, about 30 days ago, they moved to starting to review the urgent need application. So I still would be surprised if we heard any answers before springtime on that. That kind of derails what you were saying about the tax money, but just,
No, you're fine.
I'd like everybody to feel comfortable that we are continuing to pursue every grant opportunity that comes so that we can stretch the tax dollars.
Sure.
We do not want to tax everybody to death. But I also don't want us to be short-sighted and we
End up like
end
Sealy.
up trying to collect $46,000 a year of sales tax for roads. I mean, we'll never get a good quality project at the rate of deterioration of those roads.
What is the life expectancy of the road? Do we have an idea?
I've been here for
couldn't-
6 years,
I couldn't-
apparently, it's not good.
Yeah, I would be guessing, and that would,
I mean, that's without,
Yeah.
you know.
I think our biggest problem, especially in Valley Lodge, is they keep putting overlays.
I don't disagree
And that seems to be our biggest problem.
with that. And
They need to cut down all the way and start fresh.
so
We
you
did
know
that.
why that's been happening? Is because we have not been able to afford to mill them down and do complete rebuilds.
Which
In
to
large
me
part.
is a waste of money. I mean, that's money that we could have saved in order to do it properly. We put a Band-Aid on it that lasted maybe 1-2 years, and now we're in a bind now. And $200,000 isn't gonna go very far.
I wanted to, unfortunately, make a correction. I think you said a minute ago that there's $200,000 in the budget for roads, in the proposed,
Mm.
and there's not.
146.
That
That's
is-
254.
That is, look at the,
I think what I was referring to is that's what we kind of have in the bucket already. That's what we
Oh, yes.
budgeted for last
right.
year is what I was
Right.
getting
No
at.
budget and then pull from reserve.
Right,
you're right,
that's what I was referring to.
since we've got the encumbered money in the
Hmm.
draft, I was making sure we're all on the same page. So this line item of 254,000
No, it
reflects
goes into
200,000
reserves.
No, this
And
came
54.
from,
That's
this dollar amount
encumbered.
came from.
and 54 that we would earn this year on our 4% sales tax. Sales tax,
Sales.
yes ma'am.
Okay. Which, I mean, still 254,000 doesn't even cover a mile worth of road.
Just about, while we're talking about that, it's page 4, above that it's 100-50-5274, planning and zoning. That is where I put in $155,000. If page 4.
Yep.
Above where
500.
we were talking about roads, planning and zoning. After our workshop last week, that's the line item that I put zoning in. We talked about it being in engineering since that was the initial discussion we had. So the $150,000 estimate from LJA stands for now.
We
And
seen
then
that
we-
estimate? We have that estimate?
No, it's something that will go out for bid when we get ready to do it. So they're just telling us, when we have done this type of project before, this is how much the engineering portion has cost.
Got it.
So that doesn't account for the other professionals or consultants that might be needed to help us get that across the line, but the engineering is by far the lion's share of the project.
Do we know what that includes? I mean, is that the complete, they're saying it?
It's not the complete project. It
Okay,
would
so
be-
this could be down the line, kind of another 150 or another
The
150,
best
or I
estimate
don't
is
know what the
about
project.
200,000
Total.
Complete?
total. With 150
Going to
being
engineering.
engineering, because that is the development of all of the mapping, planning, zoning.
Now, can that all be done in the next year?
It can if we are get a timeline or on the project like we were for the comprehensive plan.
I had a question about zoning. Every time we talk about it, I think, what are we talking about zoning? What can we zone? Is there a map that you could furnish us that shows what zoning, what can we zone?
There's information about that in the comprehensive plan with mapping, saying that these are the types of things you can zone in ETJ and city limits, and has the mapping that matches with that. So then as our city limits or ETJ grow, our zoning and influence can grow, but for now, it describes what you can do in each of those types of areas.
We can zone in ETJ?
It's limited, it's different than what you can do in the city limit, but there are things that you can do.
So, just my ignorance, why wouldn't we go ahead and allocate $200,000 for zoning? If that's what we need.
I was just trying not to go too far off of the,
Especially if
So-
it can be done in the year.
actually, what we could do then is know that we've got 155 in, we need 45,000, where it's gonna come from? Okay, you all need to discuss, do you wanna do $45,000 from reserves? Do you wanna do something that's not,
Why wouldn't
I'm
the
gonna call it
EDC,
going backwards, but if you look at your chart from last week with the rates, if council had the appetite for it, 33 cents would earn $45,797 more than 30 cents. That's a 3-cent increase. If you look at our average in our area from the county, the average assessed homestead value was $369,000.
that's the average?
Was the average assessed, it said.
Mhm.
The difference, now this is my math, not the county math on the difference, but my math from 30 to 31 cents would make a $36.96 difference in
Tax
my
bill.
property tax bill for the city portion. It's not the school district or any of
Which wouldn't change.
that. Right, so,
On the average house, it'd be 30,
right,
what was it, 37,000?
369,652. So yeah, we could call that 370,000.
Would change the actual payment that they had, $37 a year.
So each penny, if you went up to 33, then $100.
What's the interest bearing on our Cedars accounts?
They're at or close to, depending on which one they are, 5%. At the moment.
How long ago were those moved? Were those funds moved?
I'm really sorry, Courtney. Each one is dated in the statements that we have there, but I don't
Oh.
recall by line. Some of them are already existing and some were moved. I think they were moved in May, July. And I created a new one last week for roads, since we got the news that they probably will not be working on that this year.
So we took the money that we allocated for the
I'm really
roads
sorry,
and
Courtney,
it's,
if you could just hold one more second.
Yep.
If you don't mind. Faith or Justin, did you have anything else? Did you get to finish what you were
I'm
saying,
done.
Burns?
Yeah,
I
I'm
didn't mean
Thank you.
for the conversation to go
No, good.
over you.
Well, I understand what Courtney was saying, what Burns is. I know that when we raised it to 44, almost 45, that that money went to the comp plan. But I don't think there's been any new roads that have been laid down for a long time. And each year that money is collected, that's what Courtney was saying, Burns, that it's been put away, it's been put in reserves.
No, it's put
And-
into the reserves of the road fund. It's not just going into reserves.
it is just going into.
No, it's
But
not.
it's-
It's in its own bucket.
There's
Okay, well,
no
what's in
reason
there?
why
Let's say
we
we
What's
haven't
in there?
used some
I
of
mean,
it.
how much money's in there?
$1.5 million at
How
about
much?
4.75.
Okay, but that's not all road money.
I'm sorry, how much?
It's, everything that's in the Cedars account is earning about a 4.75 average.
But that is not all dedicated.
It's
to
not all
roads.
dedicated
That's
to
not the
roads,
roads.
but we have been accompanying,
So you didn't,
anything that hasn't been spent was effectively moved by you. You said in May or June based on these little statements.
okay, you're making sweeping statements about my management of money and that's
No, no, no.
incorrect. So let's,
No.
if we could hold
Yeah,
the
you
roll
are.
on that.
No, I'm really not. I'm just, I read the statements. It says when they were dated.
The dedicated tax money earned from sales tax, not property tax, is average about $40,000 a year for the last, I don't even know how many years in a row, but let's say we're talking about 5 years. That's $200,000 over 5 years-ish.
Right, but
The roads that have been done most recently have fortunately been funded by grant money since 2017, the grants that we've been able to get. We've done, I can't quote you the miles of roads that have been done, but road work has been completed. And fortunately for us, it was not on the back of the property taxpayer directly, since federal tax money comes from us anyway, but we were able to do that through grant. So we've been able to find other ways to fund it so that money could be available for things like help us get to the point of being able to do a comp plan. Doing our
correct.
vision elements.
However, each and every year, if you go back to 2017, 2018, in our budgets that are online, you can see that road money was allocated and not spent. Jennifer herself said last year that we spent X amount of dollars in 2018. I think it was around $200,000 on about 2.5 miles of road or so. And that was the last time that road money had been spent. And that was also repeated
Right.
year before that. So those monies are continually collected and then moved into what is now an interest-bearing account. So we're not only collecting the taxes, we have been for several years, and now we're making more money on it by just putting it into reserves. And I get to your point, yes, the roads need to be done. But we need to see some sort of calendar event where we go to Fort Bend County and say, hey, we'd really like to kind of be pushed up your list, because I know my personal, it's hard to get into my driveway, real hard, because there's about an 8-inch drop off that was not fixed with the grants and whatever else. But I don't see, I feel as though it's gluttonous. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. It's very gluttonous and it's very greedy for us to just continue taxing people, even if it is just $37 a household. That could mean a lot to some people. It could mean everything as far as their total tax dollars. Who knows? But in the same breath, we're continually actively taking on the taxes at a 6 cent higher rate or a 5 cent higher rate or even a 25 cent higher rate to just put the money in an account and not do the work, is my point. If we've got this money,
So-
it is interest bearing.
So to answer your question, we were talking about 5 years. We could make it 7, whatever number you want to use. That we haven't done additional road repair that wasn't grant funded. If you collected $40,000 a year average, that's not $1 million in reserves. That money has come from excellent investing, moving money that's not being used right now into interest bearing so that every single penny can be earning money for the taxpayers so that we can stretch every dollar as far as it can go. If the EDCs weren't seeded and they weren't abolished through the state, which the city didn't do that money has been collected and it is sitting there, and it would be irresponsible for the city to not put that in interest bearing as high as we can get.
Sure.
People are counting on us to earn more money for that. So it's oversimplified to say that every penny that we have, that we've saved and scrimped and scrounged and done our best to earn, came from roads. That is not where it all
I'm
came from.
not saying it came
A
from.
very, very small chunk of that. It doesn't really matter where it comes. If you'd like to spend more of it, that's fine. You all will make that decision and it'll be with you as the council that decided to do some roads. Previous councils decided for us to continue to get the drainage project done first, and it would have been wasteful for us to do roads and then have heavy equipment and digging and that project going on ruining them. So that was a conscious decision not to put money into the roads then. That project is over for most phases, and now would be a good time. But you gotta fund it, and it's up to you. If you would like it to be your hill you wanna
We funded it last
put
year,
the
Lori,
stake
though.
on, you did.
And
And
we
that
didn't
money
do
is
it.
still dedicated to it.
But that's what I'm saying. So we're gonna dedicate it again?
Yes, ma'am, every year probably for quite some time because
But
of how much
within-
needs to be done.
Within a 31 or 30.9, whatever cent budget, you're allocating, and I know you put it down as encumbered, however, in order to come up with a balanced budget that works off of the 30.9 cents, you're allocating that money again. Otherwise, we
No,
need to put it in
I
a
am
different
putting-
category.
I am putting, let's get to the proper page. What we're saying is, there will be
It's 150.
It's $54,150 is what's expected to be collected from sales tax, not property tax this year. So the $200,000 that is encumbered, that you've already, let's consider it already. I'm gonna try not to say spent, because it's not spent. You all have already dedicated that money. It is over here. When the bill comes and they can come, we're gonna write that check for $200,000 to the county and say, thank you very much for all the work. That's already done, it's behind you, it's dedicated. What's in this year's budget is $54,150 that will come in over the course of the year for sales tax, nothing else. So if you would like more miles of road or quarter mile or however much done, you can do $54,000 worth, or you can decide you want to fund it some other way. Or you can hold on roads, and there's $150 in zoning. Do you want to take that from zoning and put it in roads? I mean, you all have to get together and decide.
If, again, these numbers are encumbered and we're utilizing it to the manner that you just explained, we need to take those encumbered amounts out of this $1.3 million.
Absolutely, that is not the proper accounting method to do that.
That may not be
That's why they're
the,
in the income and the expense, so they cancel each other out.
okay,
Just pretend you can't see them, because they are in both lines, income and expense, so they're,
got it? Or, is that all? I wasn't finished.
well, honestly, everyone else hasn't given their input in the budget, so if you don't mind to let Faith and Justin have their, you kind of need to give opportunity for you all to have some directional input.
There is currently $200,000 for roads, period.
Yes, and for a project that's already been requested with the county.
Okay. So we're requesting for this year, $54,150, based on what's here.
Right, that's what's expected to be
Okay.
earned.
So The $200,000 came from last year, what we budgeted for.
Right.
Is there any money prior to last year that was set aside for roads?
Yes. Lots.
I don't have that number in front of me right now. I'd be happy to go back and find out. You just get the number for you of what that quarter cent was.
So,
Quarter percent, I'm sorry, not quarter cent. I'm listening, really.
No, I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase it. Is there any likelihood that there's $500,000 sitting there for roads right now? I guess is what it boils down to.
I'm gonna say unlikely, but I'd be happy to get the number.
But we know it's more than 200,000.
I'm not gonna say that
Okay.
today. I would be happy to get the exact number that we earn for that quarter percent every year. And back to whatever.
But it's been
we
several
spent
years since any
That's right.
since any money has been paid out for road repair.
For major. We have paid out money for minor,
Filling potholes and stuff?
filling potholes, small sections,
Okay.
things that absolutely have to.
So
be
we
repaired.
have spent some that's not grant related.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask another question on this, just so I can understand? So look back on the roads thing again. And you got 254,000 in there, and you said for reserves is 146. Okay, so when you get down to the bottom here, you have the 361, you're 10,000 short, okay? But you've added in 100, I mean, we've got 254,000 we're adding in to be short.
So.
Yet we already have the money.
You
Am I-
We're adding-
What am I missing?
adding-
So on page one, you have the exact same dollar amount on page one on the income side. And then
Oh.
on page
Okay.
four, you have it going out of
Oh,
the
okay,
expenditure.
sorry.
To your point, there's $341,000 of money that's already collected.
Oh, okay, oh, yeah, I got you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's already correct.
Only 200 of that is for roads.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Maybe it's worded wrong, but on that one, on that very first page, Lori, it does say that the 54,000 for major road repair that you don't have as an encumbered list on the back page as an encumbered amount. I think that might be some of the confusion that is, because you have the reserves as an encumbered amount, but
So last year, the tax
That was on
money
addition.
anticipated to be, that was in the budget, the line item for the budget,
it was
that was the
54,000.
54,000 that collected, the anticipated collection. So that 54 plus the 146 gave you the $200,000 that council approved last year. And the 146 came from reserves. And the 54 came from sales tax income.
Will we, at our next meeting, receive current budget versus actual?
You have current budget versus actual right now, that was run today.
This has a complete, this is the one that you just said was wrong with the
It just has
887.
the 146 is not added into it, that's why it's added into the new budget. The 146 that was from reserves.
So
But
the,
everything else that you're looking at right there is actually, is correct.
but this isn't what Fort Bend County has on certified notice. They have that noticed as 1 point,
That's
or the
correct.
1033. So
That
this
is
is not an actual, right?
That's what
Because
I
that's-
said. This is what's in fund view. It has the
Okay.
error that the 146,000 from reserve was not accounted for. But our actual adopted budget is the one that's posted online and submitted with the county. So when we note the encumbered 146,000, then it matches exactly. So what, I'm gonna do something that just, my boss at Cargill does to me. What needs to be true, or what needs to be available to you for council to come to a supermajority on how to tackle funding the items you'd like to fund, or at least agreeing on what items are you gonna fund? We've spent a long time this evening talking about roads, and we talked very briefly about zoning. I think it's a good starting place to understand, does council want to invest in zoning? Do you
Okay.
feel like your constituents want you to consider zoning or roads or? Where are we?
I'll speak. I think I speak for just about all of Simonton, saying zoning is probably the most important thing that we get done.
With roads right behind that.
Yes.
Number 2, where everybody I've talked to.
So I would rather see money allocated to that to make sure that it gets done. Period. And obviously, we're gonna have to find money from somewhere, so I think we need to dig deep on what we're gonna do there. And I think going to 24 cents would be asinine. Y'all, we need to remember that what cost us $100 5 years ago now costs us today $500. Cost of it, I mean, everything is increasing. Cost of living as well. Y'all probably remember 2 years ago, you could go to the grocery store for $200. For that same cart of food, it now costs over $400. It's no different running a city. Prices at the city level don't stay stagnant. And I think we're idiots if we think that they do. So again, I think we need to dig deep on where we're going to get the money, how we're going to get the money for zoning. And I would like to put more money aside for roads because it is important as well.
Anyone else with feedback from the public about zoning?
I mean, everybody I've talked to, I agree 100% with Kelly, has been, we've got to get zoning done, and everybody's concerned with the near miss with the concrete plant, which would have tore up roads horribly going in and out, but on top of that, all the dust and everything.
The noise level itself.
The health risk with
Yeah.
with the cancer levels around that stuff. I mean, all of those things, everybody said zoning's got to be done, and roads. That's the two biggest concerns. I mean, there's others that go in there, but those are the two by far. So,
Okay. Anybody else with like feedback about zoning?
I think I'd like to see a plan around the project for, I mean, obviously we'd love to get it done in 12 months, but going into this and planning for it ahead of time, like we did on the roads and everything else on this side of things, and like we did on the ARPA project as well, I definitely agree. I think zoning is a necessity. The sale of that 94 acres changes a few things, however. We've been talking about it. We talked about it, and we talked about MIS. I know we paid MIS to do some of their mapping project. The zoning mapping that had to start the whole ARPA project, or not ARPA project, sorry. The comp plan. It was when they
I know what
pulled
you're
the
talking
information.
about.
We paid
Sorry.
them a lot of money to start that project, and then it just kind of went away. So I would like to see a plan, a proposal, a something, if we're going to talk about zoning, and we need to plan for the ARPA project. I'll use the right one there. The ARPA project was started out to be about $185,000 project, and it's going to end up to be about $500,000. It's quite a big difference.
Wait, say that again?
The
What
fees
project?
in the, on the ARPA project, that change in the fees of consulting and all of the other changes that we had to go through, and the building expense and the other expenses, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive than was originally proposed. So in order to put together a balanced budget that is a good number to attain, I feel like we need to see some kind of number from somebody. I mean, we can throw a number at the wall and say, yep, we think it's going to cost $200,000. And they could come back and say, to Kelly's point, stuff is a lot more expensive now. And it's
So-
not going to be anywhere near that, nor can we get it done in this time frame. So I think if we just collectively put together a plan, it would be
So
smarter.
two things. One, we cannot get a quote from, we can get a quote if we want to. It disqualifies a provider from bidding if we go out to public bid. There's lots of rules around it. I'm giving you a simplified version, but I can't get you a detailed without whoever provided that being disqualified. What I can say is I'm basing this $200,000 number on conversations with LJA. They went back and looked at the history of the projects that they have done, and that's where they come with their number. They didn't just swag it out there. But they said, we still feel like this is realistic in the ballpark, and we would like to look at it very specifically for Simonton and find out where it could be less than that once the process starts. So they can't give us a detailed look at that either, because then they become disqualified from bidding. It's to make practices fair, that somebody doesn't have insider information and then they get to bid on it. That would be unfair. We also have information from our Dura when we started the project to do the comp plan of what their estimation that it would cost each of those two projects to do. So that's where the $200,000 number is coming from.
And those two match, correct?
They do match. I didn't know that it was so heavy on engineering, but it still seems to
To
be
be able to justify.
right. That's right.
It being given that that's
there is-
stated information, is it not, I'm not saying a bid by any means. I get the bid process and those bids are only good for so long, but I'm saying just a general idea other than a random conversation of, because 2 years ago, it may have said, hey, it cost us about $200,000 to do that. But again, that was dated. So is it,
The conversation didn't materially change 2 months ago when we talked about that as we were finishing the comp plan. She didn't give us, she didn't say, oh, it's changed and it'll be 15% more. They didn't indicate that, and that was 2 months ago. One thing I do have to offer, if council is inclined, the last item that is in the 50 category, 10-50, it's on page 4. Right now it's in miscellaneous, because we need to build a bucket for code enforcement. Using Safe Built code enforcement, their average is $3,000 a month for a city our size. It would depend on how much work you wanted to do, but we talked about having a contract code enforcement, so this is a bid that we got. That's $36,000. If we don't want, if you would rather put that money in with your comp plan, you got me saying comprehensive plan. The zoning plan, well, there's $36 that's already built into this working draft that could potentially help solve that $50,000 or $45,000 gap that we're talking about.
do you think prior to zoning that's
It's up to
premature?
you to take away a budget for code enforcement.
Why would you say that?
I'm asking the question. Do you think that prior to zoning that a code enforcement officer is premature?
I do not. We used to do code enforcement with a contract officer, and it went well. It was the council at that time decided if there was a complaint, then they would send a code enforcement officer
Okay.
about it, not somebody out enforcing every single thing out
I
there.
got you.
And so
Because the codes
my
that we just.
idea would be something similar. Of course, you all would decide that.
But how does that work? If this is proposing $3,000 a month,
I think it's probably, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
that's okay, but let's just say you go 3 months without somebody turning in a complaint. So we've just paid $9,000 for nothing. How does that work?
This would be based, council would decide how you want to do it. If we're just out there enforcing everything that's in our code, or if you want it to be complaint-based. My perception is it would be complaint-based or something along that nature. So you would pay per event, not a subscription
Okay.
type price.
Now, if you pay per event, I assume there's a $150 per event, or I'm just throwing a number out. Is that
We called
correct?
6 cities and didn't find a single contract code enforcement officer available. They either have their own or they're using somebody who is not certified. So this third-party company that's what they do is where the estimate came from. I think that I know that it could be per event, and they just told us our average is for a city that's
Okay.
1,000 to 5,000 residents. So I think it could be a lot less than that.
Mayor, have.
And you could, I'm sorry, sir, just one second. So council can decide what direction we want to go, if we want to have, I mean, there are people out there that will do a contract. It doesn't have to be this company, but again, we were trying to just get the best available information for budgeting. And
What does code enforcement encompass?
so it could be a bunch of things, but the thing we get most often is, I have this lot next to my house, my neighbors, they don't live there, they don't maintain it, and the weeds are 8 feet tall.
Like mow your yard? Okay.
Most
I was
often,
hoping.
or
they were gonna
debris,
say
dumping, things like that, and so there's a process you have to follow to cite them, send them a letter, they have to have X amount of days to remedy the situation. You can end up going to court, you can force mow.
I don't wanna-
That's also not
I don't
all
want
the
to chase a
things.
rabbit, but you hit on something that is, since we started this city, we've had a law that you have to keep your place mowed, okay? And my daughter earned her college money by mowing lots for Mr. Bertman that were not mowed,
Excellent.
which means she mowed a lot of them.
Mhm.
And then the people were charged. If they didn't pay, they got a lien on their house. We don't do that anymore, do we?
No.
We don't.
So,
We
okay,
haven't in recently.
So, dumb question, why don't we?
Personnel, and
Okay.
you need, because there is a required legal process for it, you have to be very careful that you dot all the i's, cross all the t's, give the proper notice and all those sorts of things, or the case is dismissed, they could come back on the city, and we don't want to create liability for that.
It's
It
actually,
can also be things
Interesting.
like inoperable vehicles,
Uh-huh,
and,
right,
then you have to
right.
follow all the laws about that. So having somebody who's certified in it reduces liability when we're too small to have our own.
Yeah, I got you.
wouldn't our
Yeah, I was-
ordinances,
I was thinking that's what it was, but I wasn't.
Yes,
Sure.
you're right.
wouldn't our ordinances have to be rewritten completely after zoning? Because they're so dated since we just recently went through them and had Phil make them
I was gonna say,
legal
they're
again.
not
However, there's not things like, the random car thing or whatever the case may be. There was very minimal codes, if you will, with the exception of the handful that have been done more recently to enforce. So zoning would, I would assume, require
Those
quite a bit of a
only-
There's
difference.
Those
actually
are only
plenty
the
that
changes,
could be
there's a lot.
enforced, and it's not been Simonton's practice to spend the money and
I got you.
to go after it wholeheartedly unless there's a complaint or a health issue.
Well, where did the TOA go in on it? Didn't they send it? I mean, they were always sending out letters, to people and stuff, but there wasn't any enforcement behind it?
They don't have the enforcement mechanism that the city does. So their rate of success shouldn't be the city's problem, but some of it is. If a homeowner's complained and the POA hasn't been able to get any results, and we've got one right now where there's debris and weeds and down trees and been that way for probably more than a year that we are actually enforcing on, but it's not routine practice because you're looking at the code enforcement person at the moment. I think it's a long stretch to go from no money being spent on this to $36,000. So I'm just suggesting that if you wanted to try it out this year and put $1,000 in that, let's see what happens and put this money somewhere that's of higher value to you, or don't. It's up to you.
I think Dan might have an idea about it.
I've got some information that might help you. And to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Very briefly, Kelly, you're right. $150 is what we paid for everything but weeds. Weed and rubbish, we paid $50. And we hired Michelle Kettlebrew. She was a building inspector in in Fulshire. She couldn't be a building inspector here because they only serve them, but she could use her license to be a code compliance inspector here without being in conflict. My understanding is anybody that is a law enforcement officer, for example, can take a simple course, a couple-hour course, and qualify as a code enforcement officer. But that was how we did it. The one thing you haven't discussed is court costs and how municipal court would be run. That's all. Thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you.
Of the three top things that mainly were turned in, that is important, but where is it on the priority, or what?
It's low on the totem
Let's make some
pole.
moves, folks. If you love it, let's keep it, and I will not suggest it again. If you think.
I mean, if you're wanting me to, or wanting us, my opinion is zoning, roads, and enforcement officer. To me, zoning is most important. Roads are going to become a problem sooner as opposed to later. Enforcement officer, I think, is important, but to me, it's at the bottom of the bowl. I'd rather see the other stuff funded first.
Do we have any plan or thoughts around implementing, or re-implementing, I should say, the city ditch mowing situation? We've had several complaints lately about, I'll be the first to throw my hat in there too. It's a difficult feat to get into my ditches at this point.
So that could be on the table if the council wants to consider it. When we quit doing it, it was costing $86,000 a year. So it's the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain that area, even though it is not technically owned by them. It's a public right of way, just like if there was a sidewalk on top of it and a strip of grass. You all can decide to do it differently if you want to, but it was discontinued because of the cost.
What year? Do you know real quick?
About 5 or 6 years ago, 4 or 5.
It was 86,000.
Has to have
It
been
has
longer
just
than
gotten
that.
a
'Cause
bit-
was it-
So it's gonna be
So
about 160,000 a year. Because I haven't seen the diesel prices drop, and I know the equipment's tripled, so.
Was it pre-Harvey?
Homeowners? I don't think so.
Pre-Harvey.
no.
They dug out the ditches after that, way after that.
Yeah, that's been done since 2017 for the drainage project. There are other options. Herbicide, although not my favorite because it encourages the silting in, which is what we have to go in and keep cutting out. Obviously, folks are managing the best that they can, either hiring somebody, using a weed eater so that they aren't on a mower, or council could say, do you want to do a public outreach about it? Like, here's the materials out there if you want to post it or present it, saying the safe way to mow. Of course, if you have X amount of degrees, weed eater is your way to go, like the one at Buckboard that's so deep. It has to be in order for the water to flow. But when they're not that bad, people should be mowing across, up and down and up and down and up and down, and not long way. It's much more, it's faster to go long way, but it's more dangerous. All those sorts of things, I mean, that could be public outreach if you all decide you want to do that. I have had one call from a homeowner asking us about that, but no, that's it, as far as somebody who's actually reached out to City Hall.
Our next city council meeting is not on,
Not next Tuesday, but the following, on the 27th.
okay. And we will have another meeting next Tuesday.
No, we will not be meeting next Tuesday, but we will have budget workshop number 3 and city council on the same day, on the 27th.
Okay.
So, yes ma'am, 6 PM and 7 PM. So I think everybody would feel accomplished if we could leave this meeting with consensus on any segment or a list of what needs to happen, so that the third meeting is productive and we can say we're 90% there.
I'd like to see our last year's budget again, in order to get a starting point on this one. Because I can look at this all day long and it's, some of it's filled in, some of it's not corrected, some of it should be corrected, is planning on being corrected, that kind of thing.
There is
So just to
one
give-
line item, Courtney, that's not there, and you have it right in front of you on the budget, on the financial statement, that's budget versus actual.
Okay, so again, for me,
Mhm.
for my personal satisfaction, I would like to see this and to know what the deficit is versus any overages. Because according to this, as of right now, which we still have another month, well, more than a month, month and a half, 2 months, going in, and we have quite a bit of, according to this, which again needs to be fixed, we still have quite a bit of overage. And I don't want to work that into an active budget without taking into account that, like, if we budgeted $1 million last year and we only spent 900,000, then, you know, that's $100,000 that we can take from this budget and just to lower, and that puts you at 24 cents. That puts you at 24 cents, bottom line, because it's $98,000 different
Okay,
on the ad valorem. It's very simple in that count. So I would just like to see those numbers, and that would.
okay, so you have the numbers there, and our current budget is posted on our website. I'll be happy to print that out for you again, so you can have the.
Right, but this is the
Current.
this
We're
is
not,
the one
I'm
that
not,
needs to
we're
be
not
repaired.
changing that. I'm sorry, I keep pointing, not the one from a past meeting, but the one that I
This
gave you
is the one you
today.
just gave me today.
Okay, thought you had that in a different book. The one that you've got today is the most recent budget versus actual. It has the total budget and everything in there. The $146,000 that was from reserves, that didn't get added into Fund View. We will not be doing that until we do our end of year adjustment. So we're gonna be, that's why it's in your new budget and account it, so you can see it, visualize it.
So is
So
the,
if you want to work on it and you compare it home, it is not incorrect, other than one item for $146,000 that, for roads, that wasn't posted into Fund View, but it is in the budget. Okay. What's your opinion on moving some of the money from code enforcement to zoning?
To zoning.
Burns, what's your opinion about moving some code enforcement to zoning in the
That's fine.
draft?
I would do that.
Okay. Courtney, what are your thoughts on yay or nay on moving some of the money right now in draft form from code enforcement to zoning? So you could get closer to the $200,000 number.
I would say I agree with everybody at the table.
Okay,
It's
Faith?
very premature.
Yes.
Okay. So I will make a note to move
36,000.
maybe we leave $2,500 in there and move the balance, or move it all? What say you?
Are you saying move 36,000
36,000. You want to move 34? You want to
to
move
zoning?
all of it?
Move it on.
Okay.
My call, easiest.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so that would, let me just write it both places so that,
I don't agree with you there. There's a lot of issues we have right now that aren't being addressed. But
Business manager.
if I had to make a sacrifice, that's what it would be.
so that, if my back of the napkin math is right, that would put you at about 191,000, not about, it puts you at $191,000 in zoning in this draft budget. And we don't even need to create that code enforcement bucket this year. So if your goal is to end up with $200,000 in that line item, and you've got 9,000 to look for, if you're happy with 191, then we'll let that stay there as a pencil placeholder. We'll see what we can gather for you for additional information on that. At this time, what is the the direction on roads is you all would like to know what the past, however many years, I'll determine that for you, collected 0.25% sales tax was that's dedicated to roads, so we can know what that available balance would be to do road projects.
Correct.
Is that correct?
As well as the additional monies that was collected from and set aside through the past year's budgets. Like the 146 from last year.
Did they take from reserves like we did last year? Or for this year?
Did who take from?
Previous councils or
Yes.
anything like that?
I don't remember a council in memory that spent money from reserves, but I will look that up.
And Joey does engineering in county. I'd like to know what the life expectancy of a road is, because at 54,000 a year, we're looking at 230 years to pay for roads. That's what the number is.
Well, and we need to make a plan on the roads, which ones are,
We've already done that.
well, I was looking at that list. It says Flintlock. I live on Flintlock. That road's fine.
Is
I'm
it?
just, yeah, it's
Mhm.
fine.
So each
And
year,
I'm just thinking
But
we
they're
need to, what I'm
prioritized.
saying is just, let's look and see today which ones are the worst.
But they've already done that. Lori gave us a presentation, I don't know,
I'm
3 or
just
4
saying,
months ago.
My road's
The ones
on
with the
there.
1, does it have a 1 next to it?
I'd have to look at it.
Probably not.
In the
I
presentation.
mean, just the first one on the first, no, the second page.
In the presentation that she gave more recently, that's 3 or 4 months ago, she had also listed, I think, Canyon, and Canyon doesn't need to be repaired either. So there was a couple of changes on that, but it just needs to be updated.
I think every road needs to be addressed, but it was prioritized by LJA. And that's where these priority numbers on the far right corner, priority 1, Lariat. I think we can all agree that Lariat's pretty bad. Wagon, pretty bad.
how about if I add to that, which ones are in current grant application? Which ones are in phase 3 of drainage that Craig and I are working on right now? Because we want to do the drainage and then the road, or whatever is appropriate based on the condition of the road. Because some of those are priority 1s and they've already been done. And priority 2s should already be in a project. Priority 3s are the ones that have already been requested this year with the $200,000 that you allocated. So it's fair to say, let's say which ones were done already, which ones are waiting and for which method, and then we could probably, I don't know if we can get it before budget, but get another round of evaluations done by LJA to help us determine which roads are next. It doesn't take very many for us to get to a big number, especially with the ones that need a complete rebuild.
I mean, I look at Fort Bend, which is my road. It is almost as bad as Wagon as far as falling off the sides and, stuff like that. And that's, I mean, 188,000 right there just to do Fort Bend Drive. So, and it's not even prioritized on here, if that tells you anything.
There's a lot of others that are pure gravel.
There are. What's the one on section 1 at Longhorn? It's so bad.
Well,
Uh,
it might be Longhorn,
I think
the
it
portion
is.
that's still on the east side.
But I remember that from the presentation that we had. I don't know how long it's been, but
Yeah, we can update it. Updated priority list. Okay? All right, previous year's road earnings, total available or unspent money, life expectancy of roads, update the priority list, the road priority list. We're gonna make the move of money from code enforcement to zoning. Is there anything else that's specific to the items in the draft that you need in order for us to move this budget forward at the next meeting on the 22nd? Okay. All right. We will keep you in the loop as things develop. That sounds like fun. And we will adjourn. It is exactly 8 o'clock.
Lori, just real quick, nothing, but if I dream of something tonight that would make something useful for the next one, can I send you a message or call you or something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That goes for everybody. Oh, and I will get us a one-sheeter that has the financial account totals, so that you're not flipping between Cedars and ICS and all of that. A summary. Okay, we really are adjourning. 8:01.